I think we have quorum now. So, Denise, good morning. I think we're going to start the meeting. If everyone would, with indulgence, please take your seats. And a reminder that the meetings this morning may be webcast or recorded. Also, please turn off any cell phones, etc., to inaudible, please. Morning, Madam or Mr. Clerk. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, there's one change to the agenda. Added as item 4.2 is a delegation request from Suzanne Mammal, Hamilton Halton Home Builders Association, respecting the feasibility of implementing a municipal land transfer tax, and that's for today's meeting. I will note, however, that with Ms. Mammal being unable to attend today, Mr. Alan Roshko will speak on her behalf.
Excellent. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Arlene Vanderbeek. All in favour? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest this morning? Seeing none. And may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 22nd meeting? Moved by Councillor Arlene Vanderbeek, second by Councillor Aidan Johnson. All in favour? Thank you, everyone. So we also have a delegation request from Ettore Cardarelli, Matthew Thornton, and Donna Bucker, respecting information on the Municipal Land Transfer Tax for today's meeting. And I understand, Mr. Clerk, they wish to speak together in one delegation for expediency?
Correct.
Thank you. And what is the committee's wish respecting item 4.1, Councillor Brenda Johnson?
I'm prepared at this time to move all 4 speakers, or I guess 3 now. So I'll just move all 3 speakers, please.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Aidan Johnson. All in favour? Thank you. 4.2, this is a delegation request. Oh, we did that one. 4.2, is that fine, Mr. Clerk? That's right. Okay, so we will go into consent items first. We have consent item 5.1, which is it's tax appeals under section 357, 358 of the Municipal Act 2001. Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Arlene Vanderbeek. All in favour? And then we have report number, consent item, Freedom of Information Quarterly Report, January 1st to March 31st, 2015. It's item 5.2, moved by Councillor Arlene Vanderbeek, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson. All in favour? Thank you, everyone. And we'll move into the public hearings, and I'm going to ask for, let me see, we first have item 6.1 as a delegation from Zach Douglas, President CEO, McMaster Innovation Park, respecting an annual update on the progress of projects. Morning, Mr. Douglas.
Morning. All set. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to provide one of our periodic updates on McMaster Innovation Park. This one is in support of our request to extend development charge credits that we obtained when we did some of the original demolition work at the site that we haven't been able to use yet, but that we hope to do so in the near future. I know time is always an issue in these forums, and I know most of the people that I'm speaking to are fairly familiar with what's going on at McMaster Innovation Park, so I just propose to go through the highlights of the presentation and certainly quite willing to answer any questions that might arise during the process. So these are the topics that I intend to cover today. I'll focus on our innovation ecosystem, the things that are going on at the park in terms of the company creation activities, support for startups, commercialization of intellectual property, which is of course the primary mandate that we have, is to support that. Many of you will know the history. It's actually 10 years since the university acquired the site, and coming up on 9 years since we really started the business of creating McMaster Innovation Park. We have 3 complete buildings. The atrium building, which many of you will have been in, is the hub of the park. We have the CanMet Materials Lab, which is in effect our anchor tenant. And we also have the McMaster Automotive Resource Center, 450,000 square feet developed. We have more than 600 people, or approximately 600 people working on site. Just a quick snapshot of our vision. Notice that there is an emphasis on internationally recognized focal point for innovation and commercialization. We actually are starting to see that effect in some of the companies that we've been able to attract of late. Mission statement, I won't go through all of them, but clearly part of our mandate is to be connected to the community and to educate and excite the community about what's going on at the research park. We have a very eclectic group of tenants. everything from learning and training facilities, private sector businesses, incubation functions, conference and meeting facilities, and some amenities in support of that. And this is the one that I think is of most interest to people. I should explain that McMaster Innovation Park is the physical infrastructure, or the physical environment within which we support the creation of a sort of virtual environment for to support commercialization and innovation. And we do that by the way that we work with these entities. And I think it's interesting to note that at this point in our development that in any given year we have McMaster's Tech Transfer Office that's working with 80 to 100 inventions or disclosures per year, seeking commercialization and innovation opportunities arising from that. They have a pre-incubation function, and they have 5 to 6 projects at any given time. They're actually housed within the park that are companies that are just on the verge of being created. The Innovation Factory, which is our lead incubation and acceleration entity, if you will, has had 700 intakes since they were created 300 years ago, or 3 years ago, pardon me. The Don Pether Incubation Center has a couple of companies. That's the university's engineering department graduates that have gone through a business development process. The factory, or the Forge, which is just a large creative space, if you will, where we have 8 companies working on various things, and I'll show you a couple of examples in a minute. MIP itself does have a modest amount of incubation space spread throughout the atrium building. We have recently completed a biotech incubation space, which, by the way, was one of the original rationales for the city putting its support behind MIP in the first place, and we're glad to say that we have been able to complete that space and show some market demand for it, if you will, and then a whole range of business support services. So this is just a bit of a snapshot of the recently completed incubator, and this is one of the companies that's in that incubator. You may have heard of them. They grew out of the Innovation Factory and MIP incubation space, and are now producing and selling product which is a non-fluoride based mouth rinse for children primarily, and enjoying some significant sales. This is one that you may have noticed in the newspaper just in the last week or so. That's another company that's been incubated here, quite a novel, unique product. For those of you that are involved in hockey or play hockey, obviously has some significant utility. One of our key university-connected activities, research institutes at the park is the Canada Longitudinal Study on Aging. That's a Canada-wide research endeavor that's recently enrolled its 50,000 individuals in a long-term study on the impacts of aging and health status and various environmental impacts and so on. There's a significant amount of activity in and around the atrium building that's generated by this national research project. Nick Sensor, another one that's been incubated at the park that's just taken its own space. Some of you may have run across this, but it's a color sensor device that eliminates that difficult problem of matching paints when you take a sample from your house to the store and getting it properly matched and so on. It's a scanning device and digitizes the color coding on the thing. Quite interesting and enjoying some good support in its early days. Chipsetter, it's a device that robotic device that picks and places microchips. That's again just recently received another round of financing. McMaster Automotive Resource Center, which is across the street from the atrium. 4 major research initiatives, plus the first time where we've housed a significant number of students as well, focusing primarily on hybrid drivetrain technology and automotive battery technologies, but not exclusively, but primarily. Cabinet Materials, I would think that many of you are familiar with this facility. They in many ways are our anchor tenant. It's 165,000 square feet of very advanced materials research facilities, including a pilot plant scale metal press, form, roll, rolling mill, mini rolling mill in some ways. We also have a very interesting partnership with the city, in effect, through Horizon and Huck, and Hamilton Community Energy, whereby we do our district energy system, which is a mixed sources of energies, everything from geo-exchange to solar thermal to more conventional sources in a common distribution system, so we can take advantage of the timing of the creation of energy, both seasonally and daily, to be able to provide energy to our tenants for their research purposes, but also just for the basic housing of the tenants in a very efficient and economical way. And each time we do a new project, we seem to be able to figure out a new way to work with Hamilton Community Energy to be a good source of sustainable energy development on site. The beam Fraunhofer is well on its way. I understand from talking to the university that this project will involve the south end of the warehouse structure, and MIP will be the project manager for the university, who has partnered with the city and the province, and I understand soon to be the federal government, to move this ahead. So we expect to see some significant, we've already done the preliminary design work, applied for site plan approval. We're pretty much ready to move ahead. I would expect that construction might start towards the end of the year, perhaps in the spring, depending on putting the final pieces of the puzzle together for that project. We have on our drawing boards and on the horizon Emerging Technology Center building, and this is the one that's most relevant to our request for extension of our development charge credits. When I last reported to you, we had hoped that this would be under construction by now and we'd be able to take advantage of those development charge credits. We have not yet secured the final piece of the puzzle, the final piece of funding and financing to make this move. We're busy working on doing that and have some hopes that it will happen in the next year or so. This gives you a sense of a recent change in the boundaries of the park. As part of the Beam Fraunhofer transaction, we worked with city officials and we have purchased from the city the lands known as the CP lands. You can see them on the red outline there. I don't know if they show up. Oh, not really. Laser. Maybe in your handout you'll be able to see that. But it's the land that used to be the CP Rail Roundhouse on the south end of what is known as Frid Street and Chatham. It has increased the total area of the park to 50 acres and will give us significant long-term capacity for future development. So to summarize, I've mentioned some of this already. We have 3 complete buildings, total of 55 tenants with more than 600 employees working on site. Sciences Incubator has been get consistently high tenant satisfaction ratings from we serve at the park. Public awareness and support for the park is just amazing. I've looked at the research parks in other jurisdictions and I've never seen numbers nearly as high as this. So we have been able to communicate our activities and our successes to the public, and they've shown their awareness and appreciation of it. We have quite clearly demonstrated capacity to develop specialized research and development space efficiently and economically. Strong approvals from our stakeholders. We regularly speak to all our stakeholders, the university, city officials, city politicians, provincial and federal officials, and we have gotten lots of positive feedback from that process. We try and stay in touch with them. And I should add that we work very closely with the city's economic development department and some of our business attraction and development activities. So we have I would like to think a very good working relationship with them, and we co-market at times in our efforts to bring new business to Hamilton. We have had some significant economic impacts, $133 million in construction since 2007. Developing tax base, I know that perhaps this number of $300,000 a year is not quite as high as we expected when we were out of the gate, but if we're able to advance projects like the Emerging Technology Center with more commercial and private sector space in it, that tax base will continue to grow. We've performed well financially and provided a modest return on the university's investment. The city itself has given us some awards for adaptive reuse and sustainable design in our facilities, and some other awards that we've won. We take the issue of sustainability very seriously, and one of the highlights of that is our LEED Platinum Award for the Canmit building, which is the highest rating you can get under LEED, in part because of our district energy system arrangement with the city or with Hamilton Community Energy. And I think it's fair to say that we've become a focal point for the innovation ecosystem in Hamilton. With that, I'll stop. Hopefully I didn't take too long, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas, and certainly the information was very informative, and I appreciate all the updates. I will say, being one of the council members that sat around the table many moons ago when we approved the $5 million grant to McMaster to start this process, it was with great apprehension internally. But seeing the fruits of everything that have gone on and understanding over 600 employees now in the area, I don't think even when Westinghouse was there, that it was 600 employees.
That's a good question. That's before my time, so I don't have an answer.
My backyard pretty well, because I grew up down the street pretty well. So, you know, it's very exciting, and I drive by it all the time. You've been doing tremendous stuff, and it is actually one of our entranceways to the city. So it's improving that area every day. So I want to thank you for that. I'm going to turn to my councillor colleagues here. Councillor Aidan Johnson is the ward councillor.
Thanks so much, and thank you for the presentation. Everything Councillor Pearson said is deeply true. The amount of pride that you bring to Ward 1 is tremendous. I had the honor of launching my own Ward 1 campaign this past spring at MIP. MIP is open to community groups a lot, and I'm deeply grateful for that. So I know the Kirkendall Neighborhood Association does most of its significant activity out of MIP. So you're a community player as well as an economic player. So thank you. Could you please provide us with a bit of an update on the latest with the Fraunhofer Center? I understand that there is, if not a holdup, then at least some latest buzz around federal government investment in the next stages for Fraunhofer development. So could you please update?
I can
and also remind us what Fraunhofer is. You'll do it better than I will.
I'll start with the last question. The Fraunhofer Institute is, in many ways, they're like Canada's National Research Council, but not a wholly federal government created entity. They're a network of very sophisticated research institutes in Germany. The one that the university is partnering with is in Leipzig, I believe it is, IZI, Fraunhofer IZI, and their focus is on advanced medical manufacturing of stem cells. So the idea, as I understand it, my background's in law, not science, so forgive me if I don't quite explain this right, is the idea of extracting stem cells, replicating them, customizing them, and then putting them back in a patient as a therapeutic use, and producing them in sufficient quantities to do that. It's a commercialization initiative, partnership with the university. McMaster itself has some very significant expertise in this area, so they're partnering to develop this commercialization center. So that's what it is. In terms of the status of it, I'm actually not the best person to answer that question because, as I said, we're the project manager on the project. It's the university that's involved in the discussions with the various funding sources, and best to get an update from them because all I could say is that I understand that discussions are proceeding with the federal funding sources and expect to hear something fairly soon. And could I just add one more thing? You raised the community connection, and I should have probably emphasized that a little bit. We do have these conference and meeting facilities, and we actually have a record of the number of people that are listed to attend events there. And it's up to 40,000 a year now, including the art in the workplace efforts and all the meetings, seminars, conferences, and community group meetings that occur in the place. So we really do connect to the broader community through that function as well.
And you have a really good tea shop, and I recommend anyone who's ever in the vicinity, seriously, to visit the MIP tea shop. It's like fresh tea leaves, really good. Brenda's looking at me. Councillor Johnson is looking at me. It's very, very good stuff. I'll look forward to our next meeting. Conversations are afoot where the LRT stop for the Longwood area is going to be. So I will look forward to your feedback. And thank you again.
Thank you. Councillor Brenda Johnson, and my apologies, I did have you on the speaker's list first, so.
Ward councillor needs to speak. Sir, when I read the letter, I read it with interest, and you had in 2013 an extension on your on the deadline, and now you're asking here for further extension. When I was watching your presentation, waiting for you to be asking for the deadline. So that's why you're here today, is to ask for this deadline?
Yes.
Okay, so you were given a 2-year deadline, and now you are asking for a deadline to 2017?
A further 2-year extension.
Okay, just want to be clear, because I see the letter, but what you were talking about, just it's wonderful, and the things that you're doing there are great. I just wanted to get to the gist of why you're here today. So at the appropriate time, either myself and I'm sure Councillor Johnson will move and second the deadline extension.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments of the presenter? May I have a motion to receive the presentation then? Thank you, Councillor Vanderbeek. Councillor Aidan Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. And I'm just going to relinquish the chair to Councillor Johnson, Brenda Johnson, or Aidan Johnson, sorry. And I just want to ask to Mr. Zagarek, if I can, with regards to the request, Mr. Zagarek, what is the outstanding credit that's there? Do we know? And it doesn't put any onus or any hardship on the city by extending this. Is that correct?
So
I think we've done this a couple of times now.
Through the chair, my understanding is the value of the credit would be approximately $4 million. The extension, as Mr. Douglas in his correspondence identified council in 2013, extended it till this year, July of 15, and that represents now an extension of 10 years. A further 2-year extension will be precedent setting. This will be the longest development charge extension, credit extension. In the case of hospitals, we do provide for 10 years, but again, this would be precedent setting in that it would be a 12-year extension. But again, the value, my understanding, is approximately $4 million.
If I can ask further, then, and you're right, we have had some others. They were commercial properties recently that we've dealt with. But this is a unique situation in that they had to take down a very large building, and that's what the credit represented, a very large building that was there in order to begin construction of the different phases that they're dealing with. So,
and through you, Madam Chair, I believe the existing credit amounts to in excess of 300,000 square feet, but I don't have the information before me.
If I may, according to our audited financial statements where they record this, at the end of 2013, the value of the credits was $3,317,000, and the number of square feet available was 394,484. And that's, I should perhaps have pointed out that we've been able to use development charge credits as we've developed each of our projects along the way. We just haven't been able to use all of them because of the timing of being able to bring new projects on stream.
thank you. I just wanted that on the table to begin with, so I'll turn to my council colleagues now. Councillor Aidan Johnson.
Thanks very much. Mike, question of clarification through you, Madam Chair. When you say precedent setting, I take that as a neutral sort of description. In other words, sometimes it's good to set a precedent, and I would say the precedent we're setting is for an economic contributor of the caliber and importance of MIP. In other words, if another one like MIP comes along with a similar problem and request, we have a precedent. I don't really anticipate another institution of the caliber and importance of MIP coming along in the near future. So am I correct in interpreting your precedent-setting concern as a kind of neutral concern?
Yeah. Through the chair, it is. It's not an opinion from staff as to the merits of the request. Again, it's just to make committee aware of the fact, as it relates to DC exemptions, those costs are borne by existing ratepayers. They're real costs, and whenever a development charge is exempted, those costs are transferred on to existing taxpayers and ratepayers. And I'll just remind committee, at our last AFNA cycle, our last committee meeting, we had a report identifying what the value of our DC exemptions were. And in 2014, our DC exemptions grew to $24 million from $6 $0.6 million in 2013. So again, those are costs that are borne by existing taxpayers and ratepayers.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from committee? I'm going to turn to, thank you, Mr. Douglas, Councillor Brenda Johnson or Councillor Aidan Johnson. Thank you. Are you putting a motion on the floor, Councillor Aidan Johnson?
Yes, thank you. I would like to move the motion for extension. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And motion for extension for 2 years as was requested?
Yes.
Seconded by Councillor Brenda Johnson. Any questions or comments from committee? You have that, Mr. Clerk. Thank you. Any questions from committee? Seeing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Excellent. Wanted to be sure it was thorough. It's all set. Great. Now we're going to move on to, we moved to receive the delegation. That's done. So we're going to go on to item 6.2. I'm going to call down Ettore Cardarelli. Cardarelli. My apologies. I'm Italian too. I should know better. Matthew Thornton. Sorry.
We approved all the delegations. Is it appropriate at this time to ask that the motion 9.1 come up right after the delegation so we can deal with it all at once?
We can do that. I'm sure that we'll address that at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll leave it up to the mover of the motion. So we're having the group come up and Donna Bacher on the information on the Municipal Land Transfer Tax motion that's on our agenda later in the meeting. Morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing us here. Okay, we're just waiting for queue up. Good morning. My name is Donna Bacher. I'm the president of the Realtors Association of Hamilton Burlington, and I'm also a broker with Royal LePage State Realty here in Hamilton. I'm joined today by Ettore Cardarelli, the Government Relations Committee Chair from the Ontario Real Estate Association, Matthew Thornton, the Director of Government Relations for OREA, Ontario Real Estate Association, as long as I got a gallery there containing realtors from across our city who are here to urge this committee today to say no to the motion to study a municipal land transfer tax. There's two reasons why local realtors are opposed to the MLTT. First, the MLTT will make home ownership less affordable by forcing buyers to pay thousands of dollars in taxes when they decide to move to our city or within our city. In fact, the MLTT would add approximately $3,200 to the average priced Hamilton home. Altogether, local home buyers would pay $6,900 in land transfer taxes to the province and the city. This is money that's paid up front and it can't be rolled into a mortgage, isn't considered part of the down payment, and isn't considered in the value of the home. The MLTT is a tax that Hamilton homeowners can't afford to pay. And as this committee knows, Hamilton homeowners pay 9% higher property taxes than similar municipalities. In addition, Hamilton property taxes are based on a percentage of income, when a percentage of income, they're also high when compared to similar cities. You don't really have to take our word for it. Last year, a study conducted by Ipsos Reid showed that 73% of Hamilton residents said the MLTT would limit their ability to afford a home within our city. In summary, Hamilton homeowners pay enough taxes and shouldn't be forced to pay another tax just because they own or want to own a home in Hamilton. Secondly, the MLTT is fundamentally unfair. Each year, there's a percentage of Hamilton homeowners who will move for different reasons. A young family with a baby on the way, someone who's lost their job, or heaven forbid, a family breakup. It's unfair and wrong to expect these people to shoulder an even greater tax burden for no additional services supplied to them. Ettore will now speak to the impact of what the MLTT has had in Toronto. Ettore?
Thank you, Donna. By way of reference, I just wanted to indicate that I am a previous and recent Hamilton homeowner and former taxpayer, and my daughter did attend McMaster University. Despite perceptions in the media, the MLTT has had a significant impact in Toronto. In short, the tax is hurting the affordability of housing as well as the local economy. In Toronto, the MLTT is an incentive to either stay put or move to a jurisdiction without the tax, such as Hamilton. As a result, housing demand has remained high, but the supply of homes is low. This is leading to bidding wars that are driving up prices and hurting affordability. In 2012, the CD Housing Institute released a study which found that the MLTT in Toronto has caused a 16% annual reduction in resale home transactions since it was introduced. These lost sales, supported by good-paying local jobs in the finance, manufacturing, and renovation sectors. So while Hamilton may generate additional revenue tax from an MLTT, it is the livelihood of your residents that will ultimately pay the price. But beyond the impact on the economy, consider what the tax means for Hamilton as a destination to live, work, and raise a family. At present, housing in Hamilton is relatively affordable. This is Hamilton's competitive edge, an edge that the city stands to lose with the introduction of an MLTT. In fact, 92% of Hamilton families said they would consider buying a home outside of the city if an MLTT was introduced here. Families will instead look at communities such as Burlington, Kitchener, Brantford, or Niagara, cities with the same access to good transportation, but not to land transfer taxes. In closing, realtors urge this committee to say yes to affordable home ownership, yes to a strong city and local economy, and yes to local jobs for local residents by voting no to the motion to study an additional municipal land transfer tax for Hamilton. Thank you very much. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tori. That's it on the presentations then. Vermal, thank you. So questions of committee, I have Councillor Chad Collins first, and was that Councillor Aidan Johnson? Yes, Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Madam Chairman, and through you to the delegation. I think they've touched on most of the points that I was going to raise in terms of the mortgage issues and certainly the competitive issues that we find ourselves in. But I do have one question in terms of the what's happened in Toronto, and Madam Chairman, I think all of us have experienced an influx of Torontonians or GTA residents who have now moved to Hamilton. Many of them are cashing out in some cases with some very expensive properties, moving to Hamilton for better accommodations. They have money in the bank, and they're making a new start in our city, and we welcome that. Conversely, there's others, and I think it was referenced in both presentations, who just can't afford to even get in the market in Toronto, and they're moving here for greener pastures for different reasons, but again, we welcome that influx as well. In terms of the competitive advantage that Hamilton has, as I understand it, Toronto is still the only municipality within Ontario that has the land transfer tax. Is that correct? And in terms of those people who are leaving the city, do we have any idea in terms of those people who should be looking in Toronto? They're born and raised in the GTA and are now looking not just at Hamilton but other areas. So this tax, I'm assuming, that was implemented in Toronto under Mayor Miller, as I understand it, it's forced people to other municipalities. Is that in combination with some other issues?
That is correct. Remember, you're referring to just the city of Toronto. In fact, some of them have moved out to the greater GTA area. I don't know the stats, Matt. Do you have any information on that?
No hard stats around who and is moving by and how many, but we do know certainly that the tax is driving transactions out to the 905 and to Hamilton and other municipalities that aren't charging second interest.
Mississauga, I thought at one point in time, I don't know if it was now or in the past, Mississauga entertaining the same transfer tax, or was there another GTA municipality that considered implementing it as well?
They're not officially right now. It was not an issue in the last election, but in fact, I personally have a meeting with one of the Mississauga councillors this afternoon. So. Okay.
And in terms of, our local real estate association has been terrific in terms of keeping us, I think we all get the monthly updates in terms of where we currently sit. And Hamilton continues to be, not just in Ontario, but I think even across the country, one of the hottest real estate markets, despite the fact that, you know, there's talk about we're officially in a recession. You know, there's certainly other issues related to it being a seller's market right now. But Hamilton, just to be clear, can I get confirmation that we're still one of the hottest places to, from a real estate perspective, to make an investment, whether it's residential or even other property classifications?
And, through you, Mr. Chair, yes, Hamilton, we are still really realizing a nice boom market. It's a seller's market. The issue with the Municipal Land Transfer Tax, the fear is that that will take the much needed wind out of the sales of the Hamilton market, Hamilton residential market. So, and there'll be that leapfrog over to municipalities that don't have it.
Great, thanks for that. Those are the only questions I have at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Aidan Johnson.
Thank you very much. To clarify, I think you know this, but just in case it's not perfectly clear for everyone who's present, the motion I proposed is not to introduce a land transfer tax, it is to study the question.
And through you, Madam Chair, and yes, we are aware of that. And to Councillor Johnson, the studies, the Audit study that really reflected on the Toronto market indicated to us the severe negative implications of this tax. I believe that we're moving quite quickly on this because we do not want that wind sucked out of Hamilton, out of our sales. Okay, the residents of the city of Hamilton, this has been long overdue, and for us to be realizing this type of market for our residents to be finally, you know, on the map in real estate land, to have that taken away from them is just so unjust. So that's our big fear is that our desire is that this does not proceed any further. That this just gets put someplace else, and because the word of this, once it gets out, that's our fear.
Is it your argument that without the land transfer tax, house prices in Toronto would not be skyrocketing the way that they are?
I'm going to pass this. I'm going to pass this on to either one of these two that have information on the Audit study.
The evidence shows that the supply would be higher, so naturally that would tend to...
I mean, oh, sorry. Please complete your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, so with the supply being higher, it's very possible that the price would be impacted in that particular way.
Yeah, the tax is really a barrier to selling your home and moving within the GTA. If you, as a seller, if you know that you have to pay a second land transfer tax on the other end of the deal, you're less likely to list. The lack of listings is really driving a lot of the bidding wars we're seeing in Toronto, and that's really contributing to the skyrocketing prices that are really characteristic of the city right now.
Would you agree that there are other significant factors that cause house prices in Toronto to be very high?
Of course, there's a number of reasons. I think, you know, a number of factors are contributing to the Toronto's market. Immigration as an example, investment as another example. But those are two things, by the way, that I don't think Hamilton benefits from as much as Toronto does. So I think that's a really strong argument why Hamilton shouldn't certainly not pursue the tax, but even to study it, I think, as Donna mentioned, sends a bad message to the market overall, sends a bad message to potential home buyers who are looking at Hamilton as a possible destination, that this market could potentially become less affordable in the future.
What are these other factors in Toronto that Hamilton doesn't have?
Sorry, I just referenced them. Immigration, obviously Toronto is a hub for immigration. New Canadians, I think by and large, are settling in Toronto, or certainly large numbers of them, and foreign investment. I mean, the condo towers that are going up around Toronto, a lot of them are being purchased by investors. So.
Sorry, perhaps I misheard. Did you just say that Hamilton doesn't have as significant factors in its urban dynamic, new Canadians, condo development, and investment?
No, I think the point I'm trying to make is that Toronto benefits from those two factors probably a little bit more than Hamilton does.
Got it. So here's a little story, and maybe you can give me some advice as realtors. I can't afford a house in this city right now, my husband and I with our incomes put together. However, we are saving, and I haven't made up my mind yet, as a person who is actively in the house market looking to buy, whether the land transfer tax that I'm investigating is going to sort of keep me from buying a house for a couple of years, if hypothetically it's ever introduced, or whether it would just be another one of the expenses that a new home buyer just has to deal with. What sort of advice would you give me as I contemplate that? It's a messy question, but that's where I'm at personally and psychologically, to admit my own bias.
It's through the chair to Councillor Johnson. The land transfer tax is an amount which is added on to the closing costs when the deal closes. So, for example, if you were purchasing a $200,000 property and you were putting 5% down, you'd be required to show $10,000. Okay, that's what you would need to put down on that property, leaving you with a $190,000 mortgage. With the land transfer tax right now, it's a graded scale, and you roughly pay that 1% minus 275, which would amount to like 1775 or thereabouts. Okay, that would be your land transfer tax, $1,750 on top of your legal fees to close that deal. And $200,000, that's extremely cheap now in the city of Hamilton. Okay, so you're getting right in at the bottom. With this additional land transfer tax, it would mean that homeowners would have to come up with not only that $10,000, the legal fees to close the deal, but twice as much in that tax that they would have to give the lawyer on day of closing. So could it delay purchases by a year or two? I would say definitely yes. That possibility is there. And is $6,000 or $7,000 significant to the average home buyer when you consider that you only need 5% to put down $10,000? Yes, it is significant. So that additional cost is huge, and it takes people a long time to save up that amount of money.
Yes. So here's more anecdotal and biographical information. I'm sure you see how it's relevant. Thank you for your indulgence with this, Madam Chair. My husband and I, as we look down the road, we're already thinking, if and when we buy a house, it won't be in Hamilton because we can't afford the houses here. Part of me thinks that we are already well down the road to a Toronto-like situation in Hamilton in terms of real estate. And in the meantime, as a municipality, we're not reaping the benefits. We, as a municipality, are woefully short on income. The taxpayers and homeowners in my ward, which is West Hamilton, Ward 1, pay the highest property taxes in the whole of the municipality. Some of them have plans for moving out. Some of them would just want to stay put. Particularly, obviously, from the perspective of those who just want to stay put in their house that they scrimped and saved for and finally own. They just want to avoid any further increase to their property tax. So just to explain my interest in land transfer taxation, I am looking for ways to reassure Ward 1ers that there are realistic ways to prevent their property taxes from going up further. Those who intend to stay put, particularly. So I just wanted to put that out there. This isn't any attempt to wreck your business or make things hard for you as business people. Rather, my interest is in finding economically responsible ways to balance our city budget. And I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I thank you for all the food for thought that you've provided today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from committee? Seeing none, can I motion to receive the presentations? Moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Arlene Vanderbeek. All in favour? Thank you, everyone, and everyone in the audience. And it just takes us right into segue. Councillor Aidan Johnson on motion 9-1. Did you want to put that on the floor at this time?
Councillor Pearson, we actually have one additional delegation related to that. It's 6.3.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
Please.
Mr. Roshko, correct? I'm sorry. Please come down, Mr. Roshko. I thought they were all going to be together.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having the Hamilton Halton Home Builders present this delegation today. Our friends from OREA certainly have said a lot of fascinating things and given you some wonderful statistics on what should be happening. I'll continue and provide you with my delegation anyway, which I think you'll find.
Mr. Roshko, can I just ask that you speak into the microphone? Denis, I don't know if you can put the volume up a little bit. It's been challenging to hear today.
Okay, will do. Thank you. So my name is Alan Roshko, and I'm the president of the Hamilton Halton Home Builders Association. We're the voice of the residential construction and renovation industries and advocate for affordability in home ownership. Today I'd like to address the issue of municipal land transfer taxes being considered by this committee that directly affects one of our two key mandates, the affordability of home ownership. So in today's world, there are so many pressures on homeowners, whether they're to be first-time buyers, the move-up buyer, etc. In Hamilton, we've seen the price of real estate soar, even while maintaining relative affordability compared to our GTA neighbors. People who live here wonder how their children will be able to afford a new home. Many feel they can't purchase a new home because it is just too costly an endeavor. In order to achieve the growth targets set by the province, which our city has not yet been able to achieve, we need to be able to attract more people to our city. Adding a new tax, the Municipal Land Transfer Tax, is counterintuitive to this goal. Our association hosted a mayoral candidate event, our association hosted a mayoral debate prior to last year's fall's elections, and every mayor candidate went on record saying they were opposed to implementing such a tax. This is because it's just bad for business. OREA had indicated that a land tax imposed by the municipality would add approximately $3,200 to the price of a home. As a percentage of the total house price, that is staggering and significant. And this would be charged to people who, if they choose Hamilton as their home, will already pay more for property taxes than the comparable average of our surrounding neighbors. So why would we add an additional burden on these people, making our city less desirable than our neighbors and potentially losing that new resident to them? It is totally reasonable for the city to search out new revenue tools or to find ways to keep property taxes down. But those tools should be fair and reasonable and not burden a small portion of the population who choose either to relocate to Hamilton, move into home ownership, downsize due to age, and etc., who benefit no more of the services in Hamilton than their neighbors who don't need to move. Please continue down the road to good fiscal management, continuing to reduce property tax differential between ourselves and other comparable municipalities, as has been done over the last several years. We truly believe that a municipal land transfer tax is not the right choice for Hamilton, neither as a principle when trying to grow our city, nor as a revenue tool for city management. We ask that this committee and council back the position taken previously by the mayor and not proceed further in considering municipal and land transfer taxes as an option for Hamilton. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Questions of the presenter, anyone? Seeing none, can I have a motion to receive? Moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson. All in favor. Thank you, Mr. Roshko.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we will move on to Councillor Aidan Johnson to address your motion.
I read the motion out last time, Madam Chair. Would it be good or necessary for me to read it out again, or are we not?
I don't believe we...
Yeah, good. So I move my motion.
And it's seconded by?
Anybody? Can I find a seconder?
I'll second.
Thanks.
Okay, and I have a speakers list. Councillor Collins.
Well, Madam Chairman, I'm not going to belabor the points that were made earlier. For me, I see it as a competitive advantage that Toronto has this tax in place and we don't. And I think there's a reason why a lot of other municipalities haven't followed suit. And it's much like the GST issue, right? Once it's implemented, it's not going anywhere. I understand former Mayor Ford was arguing that they were going to get rid of it, they were going to reduce it. And I don't believe Toronto's budged an inch in terms of lowering percentage associated with the land tax, and I don't foresee at any point in time in the future, because of the money that's involved, Toronto moving on that issue, and that's good for Hamilton. And as I think was clearly stated in both presentations, people are moving out of Toronto because it's so costly to live there, and we're certainly nowhere near where they're at. And I welcome those people who are moving from Toronto, who have money in their pockets, who are buying homes and fixing them up in all parts of the city. It's not just a lower city issue. It's not just a West Harbour area issue. I'd say that half of the people who are moving into my area, either purchasing new homes or existing housing stock, half of them are from either Toronto or somewhere around the GTA area, and they're moving here because they can't afford it. I just don't believe that putting a barrier like this in place helps us. I'd much rather encourage people or foster an environment that helps people like Councillor Johnson buy their first home, that helps people who, when they purchase their first home, they have money to purchase appliances and furniture and all the things that come with home ownership, maybe even undertake some renovations. And I think it's important to have that money circulating in the economy. And in some cases, people may just want to keep that money in their pocket and invest it. And so for me, I heard loud and clear, as was referenced here earlier today, that the city needs to address its competitive tax situation. The 9% that Donna referenced, that number isn't going away anytime soon, unfortunately. And I believe that in implementing a new tax such as this or others, I mean, Toronto had other taxes that they had with their vehicle license plates and other issues that they've since, I believe, they've done away with. I think we need to keep the ball rolling. We've seen some very good things happen in this municipality. We haven't seen a real estate market like this in decades, certainly probably since before I was born. And I'm interested in keeping that going. I'm not interested in interrupting the momentum that we have here in the municipality. We've seen cranes in the downtown for the first time in decades, and multiple cranes, not just on one site. But I have to say, having said all of that, and I certainly can't support the initiative, I can't certainly fault Councillor Johnson for looking at ways to try to solve some of the financial issues that we have. We haven't received, by and large, like Toronto, we haven't received assistance from the provincial and federal governments. They have their favorites. That's not to suggest that we just sit on our hands and lament about that fact. But we have our work cut out for us, and I think that implementing something like this does more harm than good. So I won't be supporting it, and those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vanderbeek.
Madam Chair, I would like to say that I support everything that Councillor Collins has said. We have quite a challenge for new ownership in this city just based on the cost of buying a new home now, and I think that we need to be encouraging that. We say we want to be the best place to live, work, and play, and live is the first thing on the list. So I think that we need to be doing things to make that more attainable, not less. So I too will not be supporting this motion, although I do understand the intention of it. I just can't be supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm going to relinquish it. Oh, Councillor Eden Johnson, did you wish to speak? I'm sorry.
If I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In case it's not clear, I just wanted to state I too welcome Torontonians to the city, and if I thought that studying the possibility of land transfer taxation was going to create a significant stop to Toronto friends coming to Hamilton and buying here and being Hamiltonian, I would not propose this motion. It is my firm conviction that if we study land transfer taxation, that nothing is going to happen to the flow of Torontonians into Hamilton. I don't know whether or not a land transfer tax would have a significant impact on Torontonians and others coming to Hamilton. I just don't know. I can see a scenario in which a land transfer tax would discourage some Torontonians, even maybe a significant number of Torontonians, from coming to Hamilton and investing in our economy by being here and adding to our culture by being here. I can also imagine a future in which some reasonable, not excessively high land transfer tax is implemented, and lo and behold, Torontonians with their juicy wallets and purses and bank accounts continue to come into Hamilton and buy the beautiful, continually affordable real estate that we have in the city. In Ward 1, we have benefited tremendously from this influx, and the house prices are booming. Ward 1ers are paying incredible amounts of property tax, more than in any other ward. And as ward councillor, I think it would be irresponsible of me to not look for ways to protect them as taxpayers. So that's the motivation behind my request for a study, and I would urge my councillor colleagues to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. I'm going to relinquish the chair to you, and I'd like to say a few comments. Okay, sorry, so I'll relinquish to Councillor Brenda Johnson. Thank you. I have to concur with Councillor Collins said it very well, and Councillor Van Der Beek adding on to it. I didn't support this when you put it on the floor at the last meeting as a notice, and I certainly can't support it today. I believe that, as Councillor Collins raised, we have a tremendous boom going on right now. And it's not just houses that are being fixed up, that are being purchased, and they're not just all Torontonians purchasing. We have a good influx of that, but we also have our own citizens here who are trying to get into the housing market. Affordability is difficult, and I certainly commend them when they are able to jump in. I can tell you in Ward 10, as was raised, I mean, we've had 2 cranes in Ward 10. I'm absolutely thrilled. It's never been in my whole time in Stony Creek since 1984 that I've seen a crane in Ward 10. So, this is great momentum. I'd hate to see it. I hate to see that sort of blip created, because that's what happens. It's a blip that happens, and I know the real estate market definitely can follow that and see it occurring. And I'll tell you, I mean, with the houses that are being purchased, if you have to question the money that's going to be the dollars of the revenue that can be generated. I see this happening right now in my own ward, where I'm having little houses on large lots being torn down, and I'm not going to say monster houses, but very large homes in the $700,000-800,000 range just in my own neighborhood. So you've got to imagine the impact of the tax revenue that's just coming off of that. So we are benefiting. We're not losing. We are benefiting from that going on. All of us. So, I think the fear here is it does create a slippery slope. Toronto did it, and they're seeing the impact of it. And I don't think that we want to send that ripple of fear through potential purchasers and residents in our own city that want to move out of their homes and maybe into something else that they're downsizing in, and now having to pay an additional tax as well. So for all those reasons, I too am not supportive of this. I thank Councillor Aidan Johnson for bringing it forward, and but I can't support it this time. I'm hoping that we can find out better ways or different ways of, if we need to, of generating additional taxes to the not a tax, but something that we can do that is fair to all the taxpayers of the city. And I'll take the chair back. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Pasuto would like to speak, please.
Thank you. Good morning. No, we don't have, everybody coming here is not coming from Toronto with lots of money. I can tell you in my ward, they're coming from Woodstock, they're coming from Kitchener, they're coming from St. Thomas. They make their way out here. Some of them are selling their properties at not as great as the values we're getting around here. And they're coming here with a minimum amount of dollars to buy property. And as Councillor Collins said, they maybe need new appliances, need furniture. You buy a house, even with home inspections, when you move in, you find issues. I can tell you we bought one 2 years ago in the mountain for our daughter, and the week after there was issues, and there continues. She didn't realize that there's these taxes are on there. So she mentioned the other day again, Dad, is another tax, and we're looking at buying, we want another house, we're looking at getting a bigger home and get rid of some of the issues. And she said, it's another tax and we can't afford it. Her husband works in a restaurant, and she's working in the medical field, but she's working her way up. At some point in time, she'll be able to afford it, but not now. So, and a new car, and we don't know where interest rates are going to be going. There's a whole lot of issues here we got to deal with. And as I say, we're not getting, people are coming here, yes, with some money. Other people are coming here on a minimum amount of income, and they need to find a home and a place to raise their children. I understand the Councillor Johnson initiative and where he's going and the need to generate taxes, but support this. I'm sorry, okay? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That please be recorded. Thank you. And all opposed? Thank you, everyone. It was a valiant attempt, Aiden. That's democracy in action. How's that? Anyways, we're going to move on to discussion items, and Mr. Clerk just came forward and asked if we could move up item 8.2, which is the Treasurer's appointment of land taxes, wards 5, 8, 9, 11, 14, and 15, because this should have been under consent items. So can I just have an approval of this item, Treasurer's appointment of land taxes, 8.2? Do we have to move that we move it up first? Denny, no. So we're going to deal with that one first. Any questions or comments on that? Motion moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Aidan Johnson. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. How's that? Thanks, Maria. Then we're going to go on now to item 8.1. Tax and rate operating budget variance report as of April 30th, 2015. It's the budget control policy transfers. Any questions or discussions on this item? Seeing none, can I have a motion then? Moved by Councillor Arlene Vanderbeek, second by Councillor Robert Fitzsimmons. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Motion we dealt with. And we have any notices of motions today? None. Thank you. We have no general information. Mr. Zagarek, did you have any information to? No. Thank you. No private and confidential. Wow. Excellent. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Arlene Vanderbeek. All in favour? Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Denny.